Hey, this is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. Today, we're taking a brief look at what's been commonly called the parable of the sower. Let's begin by reading the parable. Matthew chapter 13. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly, because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still, other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. He who has ears, let him hear. Then he gives the explanation to the parable starting in verse 18. Listen to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The one who received the seed that fell on rocky places is the man who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since he has no root, he lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. The one who received the seed that fell among the thorns is the man who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. But the one who received the seed that fell on good soil is the man who hears the word and understands it. He produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Yeshua himself explains that the seed is the word of God, and the 4 different soils on which it falls represents the condition of our heart. The element of the word being the seed is also confirmed in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 23. So the word of Yahweh is the seed, and his word doesn't change. Now, all of us, and I mean every single person on earth, will fall into one of the 4 soil categories at one point or another in our life. The goal, of course, is to be in that last one. We desire to have our heart be the fertile soil, receiving the word with joy and thanksgiving. However, that's not always where we are. But that's not Yahweh's fault, but rather because of our will. It's Yahweh's will that no man perish. It's his will for us to all be in that last group, always growing in his word. Because of that, these soil conditions of our hearts can change if the person is willing. None of these conditions are permanent, unless, of course, one just remains obstinate against Yahweh. If that's the case, one does put themselves at risk of solidifying their situation to the negative. But no one truly knows the condition of another person's heart. Our focus should be to make sure we know the condition of our heart and to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. So, make it a point to work out your salvation in fear and trembling, not others in pride and arrogance. This parable Yeshua gave is not seen to the natural eye, though this painting does a great job illustrating it. only Yahweh sees the heart. So only He knows where each individual truly stands on a daily basis. And while we can put a good front on in the eyes of others to make it look like we're in that last group, remember, you can't fool Yahweh. He knows. He sees the heart of every person. So while others may see what you want them to see, Yahweh sees all. Again, every soil in this parable represents a condition of the heart. Each one has a story as to why they are in that condition. Those reasons may vary from one person to another, but the result will always be the same. The first condition we see is that of a hardened ground, a pathway where the birds came and ate the seed. Yeshua said, "This is the one who doesn't understand." This represents a hardened heart, also looked upon by Yahweh as a stiff neck. This can result from several different situations. However, I believe there are two that dominate. One is simply pride. Regardless of what someone presents to them, they simply don't understand what's been given to them. This can often happen because they're convinced they can't be wrong and thus refuse to listen to the word. Another is from being hurt. When one has been hurt in the past from an individual believing a certain view, they refuse to listen to anyone else who holds that same view. Their heart is hardened against anyone on that subject anyway, and holds that person at a distance. Thus, they hold that topic of the word at a distance as well. They solidify their own stance that they're right and won't budge from that position. As a result, they set themselves up to have the word on that topic stolen from them by the enemy every time it's given to them. The second condition we see is the rocky soil. The seed of the word sprang up quickly. However, when the sun rose, the plants were scorched by the heat, and they withered because they didn't have a deep root. This individual hears and accepts the word with joy. However, their root is very shallow. The result? They don't last long. When hard times or persecution comes because of the word, they stumble. These are normally those who are excited to learn something new. However, once they realize the word requires them to change, well, suddenly their excitement changes. This group also includes those who want to grow in this newfound faith. But the moment they're ridiculed for their new walk of life, they view it as something not worth the cost. And so they fall to the wayside and end up going back to their old ways. The third condition we see is the wild weeds or thorns. This individual starts out with a good walk, but the cares of life creep in and choke the word from their life. I sincerely believe this particular condition plagues the life of believers far more than many want to confess. Because of my concern of this, we have a separate whole teaching on this one soil condition alone. It's titled Tangled. Because that teaching goes into much more detail of this part of the parable, we encourage you to watch it with this one. These people hear and understand the word of Yahweh. So they begin their journey of obedience to the word of Yahweh with a solid form. But the weeds of life come in and choke it. Thus, their walk isn't very fruitful. Now, please understand, this is a process. Weeds don't just instantly appear. They can definitely grow fast. However, they still have to grow. The weeds are life's worries and riches. The book of Luke also includes pleasures. These weeds end up keeping the plants from maturing. I'm sure they think all is good. However, the verse tells us they aren't. I believe this to be the most deceptive of the soils, which I believe can make it the most dangerous. So what about you? Are you pursuing obedience to Yahweh's word? If so, where do you stand with life's worries, riches, and pleasures? Are you holding to the thought that you're mature in the faith while your actions, however discreet you think they may be, are shouting the exact opposite to others around you? These are traits that are easily passed down to our children. Claiming the walk and making ourselves look good to others around us. But our commitment to the Word is overrun by the cares and passions of the world. Our children are exposed to our faith and watch us live it out much more closer than you think. The enemy will play that to his advantage every time he can. What desires and passions are we passing on to our children? Lastly, the fourth condition we see is the fertile soil. The individual who hears, understands, and follows through. The individual who rises above self and lives in the hunger and thirst for righteousness, no matter the cost. This results in them bringing forth a large crop. What many don't understand is that this is not a condition that stays once you achieve it. Just as the other conditions can be changed, without continued obedience, one could slip from the fertile soil into either of the other soil conditions just the same. But, as James says, blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. May we always strive to attain and maintain that fertile soil in our lives. May we hold fast to him and stay faithful through it all. But again, just as we can slip from our faithfulness to his word and not stay in that fertile soil, we can choose to remove ourselves from the bad soils just the same. These soils represent the conditions of the heart. Yahweh is all about changing hearts. It all starts with the willingness to listen and obey what he puts on your heart. The choice is always ours. He will never force himself on us, even though some of his followers might. But it's through his grace and mercy that he will change the condition of our heart, if we allow him to. Just as much as we should always be examining our hearts in regards to these different soils, we should also be mindful that others may not be where we think they are. So don't try to force the word on anyone. Ask the Father to open the doors for you where he's working. If you're trying to work where he's not working, you'll find yourself only wasting time. If someone's heart isn't ready to receive the word, there's nothing you can do or say to change that. If they aren't listening to the Spirit, I can promise they won't listen to you. So work where he's working. Don't try to get him to work where you're working. Where are you today? Which soil currently represents your life? More times than not, we know where we stand. Now, whether we want to admit it or not may be another thing. It's up to us to change. the Word will never change. The purpose of the Word is to change us. No matter how mature or skilled in the Word you may think you are, there's always room for growth in all of us. Keep yourself in the fertile soil and let Him use you where He wants. In His time, a crop from your faithfulness will come, only if we stay faithful. Well, that's all I have. Think about it. Pray about it. But more than anything, be a doer of the Word and not a hearer only. Until next time, Shalom.